today we're going to be talking about how the horror has subsided on Facebook with iOS 14, right, Ange? Like, we're positive here today. Like, there's nothing worse that's coming down the line. We've dealt with it. You as the advertisers, the CMO, I know there's a lot of you out there that are listening to us, agencies, if you're an agency owner. We even have an agency group that we are not taking any new members to, by the way, but we talk to them every single week. And this was the first call in a month or so where we haven't even talked about iOS. Like, nobody's really complaining. They're just kind of dealing with it, which is, I think, what we've done. And Kasim, to a lesser degree, obviously this has some impact on your side of the equation, but obviously there's a lot of solutions here that you guys on the Google side have already sort of understood and have deployed on that platform. So when people ask you, Andrew, or maybe somebody like me asks you, like, how have you kind of dealt with this internally when you're running millions and millions and millions in Facebook spend on a monthly basis? Like, what things have you guys done inside the Tier 11 group, especially in the media buyers and the creative team, to withstand this storm that we've been dealing with the last couple of months?
Yeah, totally. And it definitely does feel like we're coming out the other end of it. So that's really, really good. One of the big things we've been talking about this week as a team is how do we look at results? I think the iOS 14 debacle shenanigans has made it clear to all of us that Facebook should not be the only source of truth. Now, a lot of us already knew that. There's always been an issue with view-through conversions in Facebook and, how we actually look at results. But this has really brought that home, that we can't rely just on Facebook data, and we have to look at something else. So we've actually been discussing that. We've got a fair amount of, over 40 customers right now, and they're on lots of different platforms. So that in itself has got its own challenge. The e-com accounts are a little bit easier to look at, if they're on Shopify or WooCommerce, but we've got someone on BigCommerce, and then we've got all sorts of other platforms. So that has been a bit of a challenge for us as a team to manage, but definitely using a second source of truth for how to look at the data has been absolutely essential for us. And I know for a lot of our listeners, just looking, whether that's Wicked Reports or some other type of tracking software, Google Analytics, comparisons between Facebook and Google Analytics, looking at, your overall revenue coming in and looking at your marketing spend. So that's been one of the big things that's changed, fundamentally shifted since iOS.
Is it safe to say that the importance of first-party data has never been more important than it is today?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I know that's something, Kasim, we were talking about that earlier, is fundamental to how we move forward in this industry.
Fundamental. So for our maybe more basic listeners, maybe this is the first time you've actually listened to Perpetual Traffic, or maybe you're not familiar with some of these terms. Like, what is the difference? I'm going to ask Kasim on this one because he's like the brain here of data.
We're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. But what is the difference between first-party and third-party data? I always love to hear different people's answer on this anyway, because it always makes me understand it, embed it in my not-so-big brain. But what really is the difference, and why is it so important right now?
First-party data is data that you own. It's your data that you have acquired and keep and house. And third-party data is data that you rely on other people for, other entities for. And for my small business listeners, I'm gonna offer maybe something that's going to be a little more aggressive than I mean it to be, but you can't afford to ignore this any longer. Medium-sized businesses, larger businesses are probably already kind of trucking along, but I know a lot of small businesses hear words like this and it's like, you know what, that feels kind of hard and difficult and not necessarily for me. Up until this point, other organizations have been filling in the blanks for you. And what we're going to see, what we saw with Facebook is only going to continue. Google's going to pull back data. Apple's going to pull back data. Browsers are pulling back data. Ad networks are pulling back data. But the data it's still there. Mm-hmm. And it's floating, think about it as floating along the surface of the interwebs. And as people are interfacing with your various digital properties, you actually have the ability to go up and grab that data and then bring it down into your own database. And what's really cool is it's honestly, truly not that hard. And what I mean is you don't need like a triple PhD in coding and development. You can capture first party data. And to make this more tactile, I'll say that, like, if somebody visits your website, getting them to engage in any way to where you get like a name and an email, that's first party data. And that's the more obvious round of first party data. But you can also do things like before they've converted, before you've gotten their email, before they filled out a form, you can capture their, for instance, their Facebook Click ID or their Google Click ID, their Gclid, and you can append that to usage information and keep it at the ready, so that if that prospect ever does something, especially if they've been properly cookied and first party cookies are still, well within our rights, let's say, then you get to kind of start to build a customer story. And building that customer story equips you with more and more and more information. You get to kind of, really determine who this person is. So please don't wait. Don't ignore this. The organizations that choose to move forward with first party data, they're going to be the ones that win. And y'all, it's going to be such a staggering competitive advantage. I see whole businesses cropping up just around this, just helping people, figure out how to capture and utilize their first party data. How is that, Ralph? I feel like I went off on a tangent.
No, very, very good. And as big brains often do, and what I like to do, at least on this show, is bring it down to like the basics.